Opening my eyes, I was back 40 years ago, facing my daughter who was licking an empty bowl from hunger and my wife, whose heart I had broken, ready to return to her parents' home. In my previous life, they froze to death in the snowstorm while I was drinking at another woman's house. Reborn, I returned with a hundredfold fishing harvest system. Wife, don't leave. Let me first go to the river and catch you a fish to make soup. I was woken by the cold. The wind blew in through the broken window cracks, stinging my face. Opening my eyes, the blackened roof beam above, the chipped clay pot in the corner, the yellowed old newspaper on the window, and the tattered quilt beneath me reeking of mold. Everything was exactly the same as over 40 years ago. I pushed myself up abruptly, a sharp pain exploding in my head as countless buried memories surged forth. This was the house I lived in when I was young, the home I once shared with my wife and daughter. I looked down at my hands, rough, covered in chilblains, but not as aged as they would later become. I rushed to the wall, grabbed the mirror, and saw a face in its 20s. Messy hair, dark circles under my eyes, and still traces of last night's alcohol stains at the corners of my mouth. I had returned. I had truly returned to over 40 years ago. Mom, I'm not hungry. A faint voice came from the outer room. The mirror slipped from my hand and crashed to the floor. I staggered out of the inner room. By the stove crouched a thin little girl, wearing a faded old cotton jacket with sleeves that were much too short, her small hands red from cold. She held a chipped coarse porcelain bowl, lowering her head to lick the remnants of corn porridge at the bottom. After licking, she wiped her mouth with her little hand, as if afraid of being caught. My legs went weak. Xiaoman. The girl flinched, slowly turning her head to reveal a sallow little face. Dad. Just one word, her voice holding no closeness, only fear. My heart felt as if it were being cut open with a knife. In the previous life, Xiaoman died when she was only 6. Lying on the cold hospital bed, she was nothing but skin and bones. Before dying, she held my hand and asked, Dad, after I die, can you stop bullying Mom? Those words haunted me for the rest of my life. No matter how much money I later made or how high I climbed, whenever I closed my eyes, I saw my daughter's pale little face. Xiaoman. My throat tightened, and I stepped toward her. But she shrank back, clutching the bowl. Dad, there's really no food left at home. Please don't hit Mom. I stopped. Near the door sat a worn-out bundle. Su Wanqiu had her back to me, stuffing patched clothes into it. She wore a gray-blue cotton jacket, her figure thin, her long black hair tied back with a cloth strip. Hearing the noise, she didn't turn around. You're awake, good. I'm taking Xiaoman back to my parents' home. Her tone was very calm as if she had no more attachment to this home. Looking at her back, my eyes burned. Su Wanqiu was still alive. She hadn't fallen in that heavy snow, hadn't breathed her last on a hospital bed with a high fever. She was standing right in front of me, safe and sound. Wanqiu, don't call me that. She paused in her movements. When you took the last 2 jean of cornmeal from home last night, did you think of me and Xiaoman? My face turned pale. The memories became clear. Today is the 26th of the 12th lunar month. Last night, I went drinking again with those worthless friends in the village. With no money at home, I stole the last 2 jean of cornmeal and took it to Lin Xiaomei's house. Lin Xiaomei said her family had nothing to eat and her husband was in debt. After a few soft words from her, I gave away the last food for my wife and daughter. In the previous life, Su Wanqiu left with Xiaoman exactly on this day. It was snowing heavily. Halfway there, Xiaoman fainted from hunger, and she carried her daughter to the town for medical help. In the end, neither of them came back. When I learned the news, I was lying drunk at Lin Xiaomei's house. By the time I rushed to the hospital, all I saw were 2 bodies covered in white sheets. From that day on, I seemed to wake up, but everything was too late. Wanqiu, I was wrong. My voice was hoarse. Her back stiffened slightly, but she didn't turn around. You've said that many times. Every time after drinking, you say you're wrong, but when you sober up, you still take things from home to exchange for money. Chen Dahai, I don't want to believe it anymore. Footsteps came from outside. A woman's voice sounded from the yard. Dahai, are you awake? My face turned cold. That voice, I would never forget it, even in death. Lin Xiaomei pushed aside the door curtain and entered, wearing a half-new red cotton jacket, her face powdered with cream, looking much more spirited than Su Wanqiu in the room. Seeing the bundle on the floor, she called out sister-in-law, but her eyes held an indescribable smile. Sister-in-law, are you going back to your parents' home? Su Wanqiu ignored her. Lin Xiaomei turned to me, her tone softening. Dahai, you haven't forgotten what I said last night, have you? Those 2 jean of cornmeal are only enough for 2 meals. Didn't you say you'd find a way to get some money for me today? Xiaoman hugged the empty bowl, looking at her timidly. Su Wanqiu's hands hanging at her sides slowly clenched. Seeing this, I wished I could slap my previous self to death. My wife and daughter were starving like this, and I was still thinking about taking money to help another man's wife. Seeing that I didn't speak, Lin Xiaomei took another step forward. Dahai, are you still angry with me? I know it was wrong not to marry you back then, but my family didn't agree at the time. What could I do? She sighed, her eyes reddening. I've had a hard time these past few years. Others may not know, but you do. Besides you, I don't know who else to turn to. Su Wanqiu lowered her head to tie the bundle. You two talk. I'll take Xiaoman and leave. She bent down to take her daughter's hand. I stepped in front of the door. You can't leave. Su Wanqiu looked up at me, her eyes calm. Let me through. I'll get the food back, today. Lin Xiaomei snorted with laughter. Dahai, where can you get food? Who in the village is still willing to lend you anything? I turned to her. Everything I promised you is now void. The smile on her face froze. I walked to the stove, picked up the empty cloth bag that had held the cornmeal, and threw it at her feet. The cornmeal I gave you yesterday was the last food for my wife and daughter. I'll get it back. From now on, if you need money, go to your husband. If you need food, go to your husband. Whether you're doing well or not has nothing to do with me. Lin Xiaomei's eyes widened. In all the years she'd known me, this was the first time she'd heard me speak to her in this tone. Dahai, have you gone crazy from drinking? Who is it that said they'd treat me well for life? I sneered. I was blind then, but now I see clearly. I pointed to the door. Get out. Lin Xiaomei's face turned pale and then red. Fine. Chen Dahai, don't regret this. When you come begging me, I won't bother with you. She turned and walked to the door, then deliberately looked back at Su Wanqiu. Sister-in-law, Dahai did like me before, but don't overthink it. There's nothing between us now. Su Wanqiu's face paled. I stepped forward and pulled aside the door curtain. Get lost. Lin Xiaomei stumbled back 2 steps, looked at me in disbelief, then stomped her foot and left. The room fell silent again. Su Wanqiu still hadn't put down the bundle. Her gaze at me held only exhaustion. You don't have to put on a show for me. I have to leave today. I knew I couldn't stop her, so I turned, walked to the corner, picked up the torn fishing net, and took a rusty ice chisel from behind the door. Give me 2 hours. If I don't bring back food before dark, then you can leave. Su Wanqiu didn't answer. I looked at my daughter. Xiaoman, wait for daddy to come back. Xiaoman pressed her lips together and nodded slightly. I put on the broken shoes with cotton poking out and quickly walked out of the yard. The wind, carrying snowflakes, hit my face. I followed the path at the village entrance northward toward the creek. In my previous life, I was an excellent swimmer when young. I knew every creek and reservoir in the surrounding villages, where the fish dens were, where the water was deep, where fish hid in winter. I knew it all. But back then, I thought fishing was too hard, preferring to drink and gamble with friends rather than support my family with my skills. After walking half an hour, I reached a frozen river bend. It was remote, rarely visited. I stepped on the ice to test its thickness. Confirming it was safe, I chose a spot near the water plants and chiseled through the ice layer by layer. The cold wind poured in through my collar, and my hands quickly went numb. But I didn't stop. My wife and daughter were waiting at home. Every moment I delayed meant they would go hungry longer. After the ice hole was opened, I lowered the torn fishing net into the water. Time passed, but the net remained still. I crouched on the ice with a furrowed brow. According to my memory, there should be fish under this river bend. Could it be too early, and the fish haven't gathered yet? Just as I was about to change positions, the net rope suddenly jerked. My eyes lit up, and I grabbed the rope with both hands to pull it up. The broken fishing net was dragged out of the ice hole, with a palm-sized crucian carp hanging in the net. At most 4 liang. In the past, I wouldn't have bothered to look at it, but now this fish was enough to make a pot of soup for my daughter. I grabbed the crucian carp in my hand. Just as the fish left the net, a cold voice sounded in my mind. Detected that the host has completed the first effective catch. Hundredfold catch return system activated. My body stiffened. I looked around. The river's surface was empty. Only the cold wind swept over the withered grass. The voice sounded again. Caught 1 wild crucian carp. Random return multiplier being drawn. Congratulations, host triggered hundredfold return. This return direction, dual enhancement of quality and quantity, obtained 100 premium wild crucian carp. Before my eyes appeared a grayish water space. In the clear water, 100 plump crucian carp were swishing their tails. Each one weighed 2 or 3 gene, with scales shimmering silver, and their quality was better than any crucian carp I had ever seen. My breathing tightened, and I tried to move a thought. A crucian carp weighing about 3 gene appeared at my feet, landing on the ice and flopping its tail continuously. It was real. All of this was real. I stared at that plump crucian carp, and my eyes gradually reddened. The biggest regret of my previous life was not being able to let my wife and daughter live a single good day. In this life, I have returned with the hundredfold catch return system. My wife and daughter will no longer go hungry, and they will not repeat the ending of the previous life. I put the small crucian carp and the large crucian carp into the fish basket and took out another premium crucian carp of the same size from the system space. The two large fish together weighed over 6 gene, one to stew soup for my wife and daughter, and the other to exchange for grain. I shouldered the fish basket and walked on the snow toward the village. The wind was still cold, but my pace grew faster and faster. When I pushed open the gate of our yard, it was already dusk and no light was on in the house. My heart sank, and I rushed quickly into the house. Su Wanxiu was still there, the tattered bundle placed by the Kong not taken away. Xiaoman was sitting by the stove, her little head nodding, as if waiting for me to return. Hearing the door open, she looked up. "Dad?" I put down the fish basket and pulled out 2 plump crucian carps. The fish tails slapped against the basket edge, making a crisp sound. Xiaoman's eyes lit up. "Mom, Dad caught fish." Su Wanxiu walked out from the inner room. Seeing the 2 large crucian carps in my hand, she stopped in her tracks. The river outside the village had long been frozen. Even the most experienced old fishermen in the village dared not guarantee catching fish in winter, let alone such large crucian carps. She stared at the fish, then looked up at me. In her eyes, which had been dead for a long time, a trace of surprise finally appeared. I looked at my wife and daughter, my voice hoarse. "Wanxiu, boil water. Tonight, make fish soup for Xiaoman." The 2 plump crucian carps were still flapping in the fish basket, their tails slapping against the bamboo strips with a pattering sound. Xiaoman crouched beside them, her eyes fixed unblinkingly on the fish, swallowing saliva continuously. But Su Wanxiu did not go to boil water. She stood by the stove, her gaze shifting from the crucian carps to me. Where did the fish come from? Caught from the North River bend. I poured the fish into a wooden basin and added half a ladle of water. The 2 crucian carps fell into the water, swishing their tails, nearly jumping out of the basin. Su Wanxiu's brows did not relax. That place has been frozen for a long time. There are quite a few people in the village who know how to chisel ice to catch fish, but no one has caught such big fish in the last half month. She paused, her voice turning colder. "Did you go to the production team's fish pond?" I knew what she was worried about. At this time, you couldn't touch the production team's things casually. Even if you stole just one fish and got caught, you would be dragged to be criticized in front of the whole village, and it would also make the family lose face. In the past, I had done many foolish things, not stealing chickens or dogs, but after drinking too much, I had taken a couple of cabbages from someone else's vegetable plot more than once. It was normal for her to suspect me. The fish really were caught by me from the river. I put the broken fishing net in front of her. The mesh still had water plants hanging on it. You can see. Su Wanxiu looked down and saw the wet net, with fine ice crystals on it, and indeed a few black-green water plants that only grew at the river bottom. But she still couldn't believe it. In the past, I would rather lie on the Kong and go hungry than brave the cold wind to chisel ice on the river. But today, I went out for 2 hours and brought back 2 3-gene large crucian carps. This just didn't seem right. I didn't continue to explain. I rolled up my sleeves and found the rusty kitchen knife from under the stove. "Let's do the fish first. Xiaoman has been hungry all day." Xiaoman heard her name and quickly shook her head. "I'm not hungry." As soon as she said that, her stomach growled loudly. The little girl lowered her head, her 2 frozen red little hands tightly gripping the hem of her cotton jacket. "I'll just eat a little bit, the rest for Mom." She hesitated, then added in a small voice, "Dad went out to catch fish and is tired too. Dad should eat too." I held the kitchen knife, my nose tingling. I crouched down and looked at my daughter's thin, sunken face. Tonight, Xiaoman can eat as much as she wants. From now on, our family won't lack food anymore. Xiaoman was not happy. Instead, she looked up at Su Wanxiu. She was still young, but she had long learned not to believe the promises casually made by her father. Su Wanxiu pursed her lips. "Let's cook first." I fished out 1 crucian carp from the wooden basin. The fish body was as wide as a palm, with bright silver scales, intact fins, and no visible injuries. I stunned the fish, skillfully scraped off the scales, and cut open the belly. As the blade cut in, I immediately noticed the difference. This crucian carp returned by the system had firm flesh, no common black membrane in the belly, and the internal organs were surprisingly clean. Even after gutting, there was hardly any muddy smell. I cleaned the fish and cut it into pieces. Su Wanxiu had already stuffed dry firewood into the stove. There was no oil at home, let alone ginger and scallions. Only a small pinch of coarse salt that we were reluctant to use. I put the fish into the iron pot and added clean water. Just add a little salt. Su Wanqiu looked at the fish pieces in the pot. Without oil, the fish soup will be fishy. This fish won't. I answered confidently. She glanced at me and didn't argue. The fire in the stove gradually blazed, and the water in the pot soon steamed. Before long, a savory aroma seeped through the gaps in the pot lid. Xiaoman, who had been sitting on a small stool, after smelling the aroma, moved little by little to the side of the stove, lifted her little face, and asked, "Mom, is the fish done? Still need to wait a bit." Su Wanqiu lifted the pot lid, and white steam rushed out. The soup in the pot had actually turned a rich milky white. The fish meat was intact and not falling apart. The freshness was even stronger than fish that had been pan-fried with oil. Surprise flashed in her eyes. She had stewed crucian carp before, but had never seen fish soup like this made with only water and salt. The fragrance drifted out of the yard through the leaky doors and windows, and soon footsteps came from next door. The door curtain was lifted from outside, and a middle-aged woman wrapped in an old cotton jacket poked her head in. "Dahai's wife, what are you cooking? It smells so good." The visitor was Wang Guixiang, who lived next door and had often helped Su Wanqiu and her daughter. She walked in and immediately saw the large crucian carp left in the wooden basin. "Such a big fish? Where did it come from?" Xiaoman finally had a bit of a smile. "My dad caught it." Wang Guixiang looked at me as if she had heard something rare. "You caught it?" "Caught from the North River Bend." I added a piece of firewood to the stove. Wang Guixiang clearly didn't believe it. She walked to the wooden basin, bent down, and looked for a long time. "This fish must be 3 Jin, right? How many years has it been since such a big crucian carp appeared in our river?" More neighbors who smelled the aroma gathered outside the door. Some stood in the yard, peering into the house. "Chen Dahai can still catch fish? He's almost forgotten where his own broken net is thrown. Don't tell me he got it from the production team's fish pond?" The speaker didn't lower his voice, and Su Wanqiu's hand gripping the pot lid tightened. I stood up and walked to the door. "I caught the fish by chiseling ice in Beha Bay. Anyone who doesn't believe me can come with me tomorrow to see the ice hole." The people in the yard exchanged glances. A tall, thin man chuckled. "What's the use of seeing the ice hole? Can you prove the fish came out of it just by chiseling a hole?" I recognized him, Zhang Taizhu, the cousin of Lin Xiaomei's husband. In my previous life, he had often taken advantage of me alongside Lin Xiaomei's family. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him. "If you think the fish is stolen, you can report it to the production team. If an investigation proves I stole it, I'll accept the punishment. If not, you'll apologize to me in front of the whole village." The smile faded from Zhang Tiezhu's face. The production team's fish pond was patrolled daily, and it would be easy to check if any fish had been stolen recently. He was just trying to provoke me. He didn't dare to actually escalate things. I was just asking casually, "Why are you so worked up?" I pulled down the door curtain. "My family is about to eat." The people in the yard murmured a few more words, then gradually left when they saw there was no drama. "If you find out that I stole, I'll accept the punishment. If you can't prove it, you'll apologize to me in front of the whole village." Zhang Tiezhu's smile faded. The production team's fish pond is patrolled every day. It's easy to ask if any fish have been lost recently. He just wanted to provoke me. He didn't dare to actually make a big deal out of it. I was just asking casually, "Why are you so anxious?" I pulled down the door curtain. "My family is about to eat." The people in the yard gossiped a bit more, then left one after another when they saw there was no excitement. But Wang Guixiang didn't leave. She glanced at the bundle Su Wanqiu had packed, then at the bubbling fish soup in the pot, and roughly guessed what had happened. "Dahai, Wanqiu has suffered a lot following you. If you truly want to settle down, stop hanging around with those shady characters from now on." I nodded. "Sister Guixiang, I understand." Wang Guixiang was taken aback. In the past, whenever she said such things, I would either get angry or accuse her of meddling. Today, I actually listened. "Good that you understand." She didn't continue scolding. Instead, she took a handful of dried scallion leaves from her pocket and placed them on the stove. "Put a little in the soup. The child will enjoy it. If you really want to live a proper life, stop hanging around with those shady people in the future." I nodded. "Sister Guixiang, I understand." Wang Guixiang was stunned. In the past, when she said things like this, I would either get angry or accuse her of meddling. But today I actually took it to heart. "Good that you understand." She didn't continue scolding me. Instead, she took a handful of dried scallion leaves from her bosom and placed them on the stove. "Put a little in the soup. The kids will enjoy it." Su Wanqiu quickly said, "Sister, you should keep these for yourself. A few scallion leaves aren't worth much." Wang Guixiang waved her hand. "My husband is waiting for me to cook. I need to get back." Xiaoman ran to the door. "Thank you, Aunt Guixiang. Such a good kid." Wang Guixiang patted her head and left. After the fish soup was done, I first filled a large bowl with the most intact piece of belly meat. Carefully removing the bones, I handed it to Xiaoman. Eat slowly. Xiaoman held the bowl, but didn't pick up her chopsticks. She looked at me, then at Su Wanxiu. Mom eats first. Mom's not hungry. Su Wanxiu put the chopsticks into her hand. You eat. Only then did Xiaoman cautiously take a sip of the fish soup. The freshness spread across her tongue, and her eyes lit up. It's delicious. She picked up a small piece of fish and put it in her mouth. The meat was so tender it almost melted without needing to chew. The little girl ate faster and faster, but afraid of seeming greedy, she tried to slow down. Watching her broke my heart. A 5-year-old child had to be so careful eating a fish. How despicable had I been in my previous life to let my own daughter live like this? There's plenty more in the pot. No one's competing with you. Xiaoman asked with fish in her mouth. Will there be more tomorrow? Yes, I replied. And there will be meat, eggs, and white flour buns in the future. Su Wanxiu paused in her movements of ladling the soup, but didn't respond. Having fish tonight didn't mean there would be fish every day. I had made too many empty promises before. She didn't dare to believe me anymore. After the three of us finished eating, there was still plenty of fish and soup left. Su Wanxiu carefully stored it in an earthenware jar, planning to save it for her daughter's breakfast. I kept the other crucian carp alive in a wooden basin, covering it with a bamboo basket. Aren't we eating this fish? Su Wanxiu asked. I'll take it to the town tomorrow morning to sell, in exchange for some grain. Su Wanxiu looked up at me. Private stalls aren't allowed in town. Private trade was strictly regulated in this era. Swapping a few extra eggs for some thread or needles might go unnoticed, but openly selling goods with price tags on the street could land you in trouble if caught. I won't set up a stall. I'll ask at the state-run restaurant. I remembered that the town's state-run restaurant always bought fresh river fish. As long as the quality was good, the kitchen wouldn't refuse. Su Wanxiu didn't stop me. She just put Xiaoman on the Kong, and mother and daughter slept in the inner room as usual. I voluntarily took the tattered quilt to the outer room. Su Wanxiu's expression shifted slightly when she saw my action, but she said nothing. The next day, I got up before dawn, put the crucian carp from the basin into a fish basket, and covered it with a wet cloth to keep it from drying out. Just as I was about to leave, Su Wanxiu came out of the inner room. I turned back and said, I'll be back by noon. She said softly, be careful on the road. As soon as the words left her mouth, she was startled herself. I smiled, okay. It was over 10 li from the village to the town. Braving the cold wind, I walked for over an hour before I saw the row of low houses at the town entrance. The state-run restaurant was diagonally across from the supply and marketing cooperative. A red wooden sign bore a few faded characters, and a blackboard at the door listed today's offerings. When I walked in, the restaurant had just opened. Behind the counter sat a man in his 30s, head down, fiddling with an abacus. Comrade, I'm not here to eat. I took off the fish basket. I have a freshly caught crucian carp. I'd like to ask if you're interested in buying it. The man frowned. We have fixed procurement channels. We don't usually accept things from individuals. I didn't argue. I just lifted the wet cloth. Take a look at the fish first. The man was about to send me away, but when his eyes fell on the fish basket, he leaned forward. Such a big crucian carp? He came out from behind the counter, pressed the fish's belly, and lifted its gills to check. The gills were bright red, the eyes clear, and even after being out of water for over an hour, the fish was still moving in the basket. Just caught. Caught from an ice hole last night, kept in water all along. The man clearly knew fish. He examined it thoroughly, his surprise growing. Wait here. He picked up the fish basket and quickly walked to the back kitchen. Soon, a chef in his 50s, wearing a white apron, came out with him. The chef, surnamed Zhao, was the head chef of the state-run restaurant. He placed the fish on the cutting board, glanced at it, and asked, Which river did you catch this from? The creek north of Qinjiawan. Can such a good crucian carp grow there? Chef Zhao was skeptical. I remained calm. The fish is right here. If you think it's no good, I'll take it away. Chef Zhao picked up a kitchen knife and made a shallow cut at the tail. The flesh was white and firm, with little blood seeping out, and there was no muddy smell. He dipped his finger in it and sniffed. Good fish. Old Lu, go call the director. The counterman acknowledged and soon brought back a middle-aged man in a gray mouse suit. His name was Zhou Guoqiang, the director of the state-run restaurant. He entered and asked, What fish is worth calling me over for? Chef Zhao pointed at the cutting board. We have a table of guests who want river fish for lunch today. The carp from the aquatic products station had too much muddy smell. This one is perfect. Zhou Guoqiang looked at the fish, then sized me up. Is this fish yours? Yes. How much do you want for it? I didn't rush to name a price. What's the usual price for crucian carp at the restaurant? A flicker of surprise crossed Zhou Guoqiang's eyes. This young man, though shabbily dressed, showed no timidity in front of him and didn't try to exploit the situation with an exorbitant price. Ordinary Crucian carp goes for 2 mao per catty. Yours is big and in good condition. I'll give you 3.5 mao per catty. The fish weighed 3 catties and 2 liang, totaling 1 yuan and 1 mao and 2 fun. This price was significantly higher than the usual purchase price. I nodded, deal. Zhou Guoqiang had the fish weighed and took money from the drawer. Can you get more of this kind of fish in the future? I can't guarantee it every day, but if I come across good fish, I'll bring them to you first. Zhou Guoqiang appreciated my measured response. All right, from now on, if you get Crucian carp over 3 catties, or soft-shell turtles, mandarin fish, or snakehead fish, you can come directly to me. As long as the quality is good, I won't shortchange you. He took a piece of paper with writing on it, wrote his name on the back, and handed it to me. When you come in, mention Zhou Guoqiang. If you can't find me, look for Chef Zhao. Thank you, Director Zhou. I took the note. Zhou Guoqiang also pulled out 2 jin of food coupons from the drawer. These are leftover coupons from the restaurant's internal purchases. The fish is truly rare. Consider this a little extra. I didn't refuse. What I needed most right now were food coupons. I would repay this favor with even better fish in the future. Leaving the state-run restaurant, I went straight to the supply and marketing cooperative. With the money from selling the fish and the food coupons, I bought 10 jin of cornmeal, 2 jin of white flour, 6 eggs, and half a jin of brown sugar. I didn't have enough money for more, so I wrapped the white flour and brown sugar separately and put the cornmeal into a cloth bag I had brought. Together, these supplies would be enough to sustain the family for a few days, until I could go fishing in the river again and truly turn things around. Just as I came out of the supply cooperative, a surprised voice came from behind. Dahai? I turned around and saw Lin Xiaomei standing not far away with a bamboo basket. How did you know I was coming to town today? Are these things for me? She reached out to take the paper package in Chen Dahai's hand. Chen Dahai sidestepped. It's none of your business. Lin Xiaomei's hand froze in midair. Are you still angry? Dahai, I know you had things you couldn't say in front of your sister-in-law yesterday. Now that it's just the 2 of us, you don't have to pretend. Chen Dahai looked at her matter-of-fact attitude and found it ridiculous. How stupid was he in his past life to see this woman as an unattainable white moonlight? The cornmeal, white flour, eggs, and brown sugar I bought are all for Wanqiu and Xiaoman. None for you. Lin Xiaomei's smile slowly faded. Since when can your family afford white flour? I heard you caught a big fish last night. Did you sell it? Chen Dahai didn't answer and picked up the grain sack to leave. Lin Xiaomei caught up. Dahai, my family really has no food left. You bought so much, give me half first. When I'm better off later, I'll pay you back. Chen Dahai stopped. Half? Yes. Lin Xiaomei thought he was softening. You know my situation. My husband has been in a bad mood lately. If I go back empty-handed, he'll take it out on me again. You used to hate seeing me suffer. Chen Dahai turned to face her. If he takes it out on you, go settle it with him. How your family lives is your business. Don't think about taking food from my wife and child's mouth. Lin Xiaomei's face darkened. Chen Dahai, do you have to be so harsh? Don't forget, who was it that chased after me, saying they'd give me anything? That was then. Chen Dahai picked up the grain sack. From now on, stay away from me. Lin Xiaomei stood at the entrance of the supply cooperative, watching his back, gritting her teeth in anger. She couldn't believe Chen Dahai could really let her go. How could a man who had orbited her for so many years change overnight? He must be playing hard to get. He'll come back to her eventually. Chen Dahai didn't care what Lin Xiaomei thought. He hurried back to Chen family village. Before he even entered the yard, Chen Xiaoman ran out of the house. The little girl saw the grain sack on his shoulder, her eyes sparkling. Dad, did you really get food? Got it. Chen Dahai put the sack in front of her and took out the paper package of eggs from his chest. And eggs. Chen Xiaoman reached out, but didn't dare touch them. Are they all ours? All ours. Can I eat one a day? Chen Dahai's heart ached. Yes. You can even have 2 if you want. Chen Xiaoman hugged the grain sack, smiling with her small teeth showing. Su Wanqiu stood at the door, watching the scene, feeling dazed. Chen Dahai really had traded a fish for food. Not just cornmeal, but also white flour, eggs, and brown sugar that they couldn't even afford for New Year's in the past. Her gaze fell on Chen Dahai. How much did the fish sell for? 1 yuan and 12 cents. Chen Dahai took out all the remaining money and food stamps and put them in her hand. Director Zhou at the restaurant gave me 2 jin of food stamps. I used some for shopping. The rest is here. Su Wanqiu looked at the few bills in her palm. Chen Dahai had never handed over money to her before. Even if he had just a cent, he'd keep it for liquor. You're not keeping any for yourself? No. Chen Dahai carried the grain sack into the house. From now on, The money I earn from selling fish will all be managed by you. You decide what to buy for the family and what to get for Xiaoman. Su Wanxiu clutched the few bills, her fingertips tightening little by little. She still couldn't believe Qindahai had really changed. But the money in her hand was real. The food in the house was real. Last night's fish soup was real too. Qin Xiaoman hugged the 6 eggs and asked cautiously, "Mom, can I eat one today?" Su Wanxiu looked at her daughter's expectant eyes, her nose tingling. "Yes, Mom will steam you an egg custard." Qin Xiaoman happily ran toward the stove. Qindahai stood at the door, watching the busy mother and daughter, his gaze growing firm. One Christian carp had only brought back half a sack of grain. But this was just the beginning. One day, he would fill this shabby house with grain, so his wife and daughter would never have to be cautious over an egg again, and no one would ever take what belonged to them. Just then, a system prompt sounded in Qindahai's mind. First sale of caught fish completed. Gained 10 experience points. Current system level, level 1. Experience required to upgrade to level 2, 100 points. After system upgrade, daily return count will increase, and quality enhancement function will be unlocked. Qindahai's eyes flickered. Before he could think further, hurried footsteps came from outside the yard. Wang Guixiang lifted the door curtain and shouted breathlessly, "Dahai, something happened at North River Bend." People from the county aquatic products station came to check the fish situation, and the ice suddenly collapsed. Someone fell into the water and hasn't been pulled out yet. When Wang Guixiang rushed into the yard, Qindahai was squatting at the door, mending his fishing net. "Dahai, something happened at North River Bend." A few people from the county aquatic products station came to check the winter fish situation here. Just now, the ice suddenly collapsed, and someone fell in. They haven't been pulled out yet. Qindahai's shuttle stopped. "County aquatic products station?" He looked up and pressed, "Who fell in?" "I heard it's a technician from the station, who came with their station chief." Wang Guixiang was panting with anxiety. All the villagers who can swim have gone over, but in this cold weather, who dares to jump into an ice hole? Su Wanxiu came out of the house, and, hearing this, instinctively looked at Qindahai. Qindahai didn't get up immediately. His mind was quickly calculating. The state-run restaurant could take his premium Christian carp, but that was just one sales channel. If he wanted to expand his fishing scale in the future, whether it was getting fishing permits, finding formal purchasing channels, or contracting fish ponds and buying fry, he would have to go through the county aquatic products station. Now that someone from the station had fallen in, and the station chief himself was on site, if he could save the person, the favor would be worth more than selling a few fish. Qindahai was no self-sacrificing hero. In his past life, he had suffered enough from impulsive actions. In this life, he wouldn't risk his newly regained life for a stranger. But he knew the waters of North River Bend better than anyone in the village. He knew where the hidden channels were, which way the current flowed, and where people tended to get trapped under the reeds. As long as he prepared properly, the risk might be manageable. Qindahai dropped the shuttle, stood up, took the hemp rope from the wall, and grabbed an ice pick and a short knife. "Sister Guixiang, lead the way." Su Wanxiu's face changed. "Are you going into the water? Let me go check it out first." Qindahai wrapped the hemp rope around his waist and checked the knots. "Don't worry. If I do go in, I won't risk my life recklessly." Su Wanxiu stood still, her lips moving. She wanted to persuade Qindahai not to go. But out there, a life was at stake. Besides, Qindahai's expression was different from before. Not like when he was drunk and showing off, but as if he had already made up his mind. Qindahai picked up his things and walked out. When he reached the yard gate, he looked back at Su Wanxiu and Qin Xiaoman. "Wait for me at home." Qin Xiaoman clutched Su Wanxiu's clothes and whispered, "Dad, come back soon." Qindahai nodded and quickly followed Wang Guixiang out of the yard. North River Bend was not far from the village. Along the way, many villagers were heading there. Before he even reached the riverbank, Qindahai heard chaotic shouts ahead. "Probe the pole further left. There's nothing underneath." "Where's the rope?" "Get the rope." Qindahai rushed up the riverbank and saw a large hole in the middle of the ice. Several villagers were lying at the edge, stirring the water with bamboo poles. Beside them stood a few men in cadre uniforms. One middle-aged man in his 40s had a grim face, his pants legs wet, bending over to stare into the ice hole. "The person fell in right here. He surfaced once just now, so why can't we find him?" Old Uncle Zhou, who was accompanying the aquatic station staff, was sweating profusely. "Station chief's son, there might be an undercurrent down there. The person might have been swept away." Sun Weigua turned to the crowd. "Who knows this river best?" The villagers gathered on the bank looked at each other, but no one spoke. North River Bend was deep in winter, with tangled waterweed and hidden channels below. Most villagers only set nets in shallow waters when fishing, and few dare to dive into deep water. Qindahai stepped onto the ice. Stop fishing here. Everyone turned to look at him. Zhang Taizhu frowned when he saw Chen Dahai. What are you here to cause trouble? Even old Uncle Zhou can't find the person. What can you do? Chen Dahai ignored him, walked to the edge of the ice hole, and crouched down, observing the cracked ice and the direction of the water surface movement. The broken ice near the hole was drifting southeast. It wasn't fast, but it never stopped. This indicated there was indeed a current below. Chen Dahai looked up again at the reed marsh downstream. The person isn't here. Sun Weigua immediately asked, do you know where he was swept to? There's a diagonal underground channel heading east below. Chen Dahai pointed to the reed marsh a dozen meters away. After the river freezes in winter, the water in the underground channel still flows. If someone falls in, they'll be carried there quickly. Sun Weigua looked in the direction he pointed. The ice near the reed marsh looked intact, showing no sign of a waterway underneath. Are you sure? I've been in this river before. Chen Dahai stood up and said, continuing to fish here will only waste time. Sun Weigua didn't believe him immediately, but Zhang Taizhu sneered first. Chen Dahai, stop pretending to know it all. The North River Bend is huge. You say there's an underground channel just because you say so? Chen Dahai turned to him. If you don't believe me, you can keep poking with bamboo poles. If the person is lost, you take responsibility. Zhang Taizhu's smile froze. He dared not take that on. Sun Weigua stared at Chen Dahai for a few seconds. Can you save him? First prepare 2 long ropes. Chen Dahai pointed to the hemp rope around his waist. One ties around me, the other to tie the drowning person. Also find 4 or 5 strong men, spread out, don't crowd in one place. Sun Weigua realized he wasn't speaking casually and immediately turned to arrange. Do as he says. Several villagers quickly fetched another hemp rope. Chen Dahai checked the ropes and tucked a short knife into his sleeve. Underwater, the worst is getting tangled in fishing nets and weeds. Without a knife, even a good swimmer is useless. When Su Wanxiu arrived at the riverbank with Chen Xiaoman, she saw Chen Dahai taking off his cotton jacket. Her face pale, she walked quickly with her daughter in her arms. Chen Dahai. Chen Dahai turned around. Su Wanxiu looked at the big hole in the ice, her voice tight. Are you really going down? I know the underwater route, but this water can freeze a person to death. I'll tie the rope securely. Chen Dahai tightened the knot and pointed to the reed marsh. The current below isn't fast. After I find him, I'll tug 3 times in a row. Su Wanxiu still stared at him. Chen Dahai said in a low voice, I'm not trying to be a hero. If someone from the aquatic products station dies here, it's bad for the village. If I can save him, it'll make things easier for selling fish and handling procedures later. Su Wanxiu was stunned. She didn't expect Chen Dahai to be so blunt, but that bluntness reassured her. He wasn't acting on impulse, nor trying to show off in front of the villagers. Chen Dahai knew what he was doing. You must come back. After saying this, Su Wanxiu realized the worry in her tone. She quickly looked away. Chen Dahai glanced at her and nodded. I'll come back. He carried an ice chisel toward the reed marsh. At the estimated spot, Chen Dahai first tested the ice thickness with the chisel, then began chiseling once sure it could support the weight of people around. The ice was thick. After more than a dozen strikes, he broke a hole just big enough for one person. Chilling cold rose from the water. Chen Dahai lay at the edge, observing the current direction. Hold the rope steady. Old Uncle Zhou and several villagers responded simultaneously. Chen Dahai took a deep breath, rolled over, and slid into the icy water. The cold almost pierced his bones the moment he touched the water. Chen Dahai forced down his body's instinct, used the rope to steady his direction, and swam downstream along the underground channel. The ice blocked most of the light. Underwater was dim. He could only rely on the current and memory to identify positions. After swimming a few meters, a large patch of dead water plants appeared ahead. Chen Dahai pushed them aside and soon felt a cold arm. Found the person. Zhao Wenshan was unconscious, his body held up by water plants. But one foot was tangled in an abandoned fishing net. Chen Dahai grabbed his collar and tried to pull twice. The net didn't budge. He immediately pulled out the short knife and groped to cut the net near Zhao Wenshan's foot. Underwater, he couldn't get leverage. It took several cuts to sever the aged netting. Chen Dahai passed the spare rope under Zhao Wenshan's armpits, tied a knot, and tugged 3 times in a row. On shore, Sun Weigua kept his eyes fixed on the rope. As soon as the rope moved, he shouted, "Pull!" Several villagers pulled together. Zhao Wenshan was soon dragged near the ice hole. People waiting at the edge grabbed his cotton coat and lifted him onto the ice. Sun Weigua rushed over to check his breath. Still alive. Quickly carry him to shore for resuscitation. Everyone bustled about. Only then did old Uncle Zhou notice the other rope had gone slack. Where's Chen Dahai? Su Wanxiu's head shot up. The ice hole showed only rippling water, no sign of him. Zhang Taizhu peered in, his face pale. Could he have been swept away? Su Wanqiu's arms tightened around Qin Xiaoman. Shut up. Zhang Taizhu was stunned by her shout. Old Uncle Zhou quickly tugged the rope. There was no response. Several villagers who could swim exchanged glances and gritted their teeth, preparing to tie ropes and go down again. Just then, a dull sound came from the reed marsh a dozen meters away. There was an old ice hole there that villagers used for water in winter. It hadn't been used for days, so a thin layer of ice had formed on the surface, covered with some snow, making it look no different from the surrounding ice from a distance. Now, that thin ice cracked from below. A hand first broke the surface. Then Chun Dahai smashed through the floating ice, stuck his head out, and gasped for air. He's over there. The villagers immediately turned and ran over. The edge of the old ice hole wasn't thick. Several people lay on the ice and extended bamboo poles, pulling Chun Dahai up bit by bit. Chun Dahai was soaked through. His hair and eyebrows quickly frosted, his lips purple from cold. He lay on the ice catching his breath, then sat up with effort. Su Wanqiu arrived with Qin Xiaoman. Seeing that Chun Dahai could still move, her tense shoulders relaxed. Weren't you tied to the rope? Chun Dahai looked down at his waist. The hemp rope had snapped. There was an old fishing net underwater. When I cut the net, the rope got caught on an iron hook, so I had to cut it too. Luckily, I remembered this old ice hole. Su Wanqiu looked at the broken rope and said nothing more. But her arms holding Qin Xiaoman still trembled slightly. Qin Dahai knew she had been truly scared. He took off his soaked coat and wrapped himself in a cotton jacket handed by a villager. On the other side, after simple first aid, Zhao Wenshan finally spat out river water and regained breathing. Sun Weiguo let out a long sigh of relief. He stood up and quickly walked to Qin Dahai. Comrade, what's your name? Qin Dahai, from Chun Family Village. Sun Weiguo extended his hand. I'm Sun Weiguo, head of the County Aquatic Products Station. If it weren't for you today, Zhao Wenshan's life would have been lost here. Qin Dahai didn't take the opportunity to say much, just shook his hand. First, send him to the hospital. The river water is too cold. Delaying could cause problems. Sun Weiguo nodded. You should come for a checkup too. No need. Qin Dahai pulled his cotton jacket tighter. I'm fine. I'll just warm up at home. Sun Weiguo looked at his frostbitten face with a serious expression. I'll remember this life-saving favor. When you come to the County Aquatic Products Station, just mention my name. This was exactly what Qin Dahai was waiting for. But he showed no eagerness on his face, nor did he immediately make any requests. A favor is most valuable when it's just owed. Asking now would only get some immediate small benefits. Keeping this connection for when it's truly needed would yield much more. You're too kind, Director Sunday. Qin Dahai said. The important thing is that he survived. Sun Weiguo looked at him with increased approval. Many villagers overheard their conversation. Their expressions varied. Zhang Taizhu stood behind the crowd, his face especially grim. He had been hoping to see Qin Dahai make a fool of himself. Who would have thought that this village outcast, despised by everyone, would actually save someone from the aquatic product station from under the ice river? From now on, Station Master Sun truly remembers Qin Dahai. Who would dare to treat him like the former hooligan? As everyone prepared to send Zhao Wenshan to the town hospital, a worker from the aquatic product station suddenly pointed at the ice. Station Master Sun, there's still a fish here. The old fishing net that was cut off earlier was dragged up together. A large fish over a foot long was tangled in the net, slapping its tail on the ice. The fish was yellowish-green with irregular dark spots on its body, and its dorsal fin stood upright. Sun Weiguo recognized the species at a glance. Mandarin fish? There are still such large mandarin fish in North River Bay. Qin Dahai followed his gaze. This mandarin fish weighed at least 4 or 5 gene. In this season, it was definitely a rare big catch. More importantly, mandarin fish was a new species he had never caught before. As long as he completed the effective catch himself, the system might trigger a new return. Qin Dahai walked to the old fishing net, reached out, and pressed down on the struggling mandarin fish. The moment he took the fish out of the net, a familiar mechanical prompt sounded in his mind. Detected host's first capture of a new species of catch. Qin Dahai's eyes narrowed slightly. This mandarin fish might bring him a surprise far greater than the crucian carp. Detected host's first capture of a new species of catch. Catch type: wild mandarin fish. Random return multiplier being drawn. Qin Dahai heard the system prompt, his hand still pressing on the mandarin fish's back, his face showing no abnormality. All around were villagers and people from the County Aquatic Products Station. The system's return could be stored in that mysterious water area, invisible to others, but he couldn't study it in front of so many people. After the mandarin fish escaped the abandoned net, it struggled violently on the ice. A fish weighing 4 or 5 gene had considerable strength, its tail slapping continuously, sending ice chips flying everywhere. Chen Dahai grabbed the fish behind the gills and lifted it up. Zhang Taizhu stood behind the crowd, his eyes never leaving the fish. Ordinary Crucian carp could only sell for a few cents per gene. Mandarin fish were rare, and this one weighed 4 or 5 gene. If taken to the state-owned restaurant in town, it could fetch several yuan, equivalent to many days' wages for an ordinary person. Zhang Taizhu grew more envious. Chen Dahai had just saved someone from the aquatic product station, and now he had picked up such a large mandarin fish for free. All the good fortune fell on him alone. Why? Wait. Zhang Taizhu squeezed out of the crowd and blocked Chen Dahai. You can't take this fish away. Chen Dahai looked up at him. Why? Zhang Taizhu pointed at North River Bay beneath his feet, speaking with a self-righteous tone. The fish was caught from our Chun family village's river. This water area is under the management of the production team, so the fish naturally belong to the collective. Such a large mandarin fish. Do you want to take it for yourself without asking the others in the village? A few nearby villagers heard this, and their eyes fell on the mandarin fish. Such a big fish would make anyone envious. Someone muttered quietly, Taizhu has a point. North River Bay isn't Chen Dahai's private property. Usually, catching a couple of small fish in the river goes unnoticed, but this mandarin fish is different. Selling it could bring in a lot of money, right? Hearing the support, Zhang Taizhu grew more confident. He stepped forward and reached for the mandarin fish. Hand the fish over to me first. After the team discusses how to handle it, we'll decide whether to give you a share. Chen Dahai turned sideways to avoid his hand. Give it to you? Since when can you represent the production team? Zhang Taizhu's face darkened. If I can't represent the production team, can you? This fish was caught in collective waters. I'm just keeping it for the team. What's the problem? Chen Dahai looked at his eager expression, a cold smile curling at the corner of his mouth. When the aquatic product station worker fell into the ice hole, you just stood on the bank watching. I asked you to go into the water to rescue him, but you didn't dare. I asked you to probe the hidden ditch with a bamboo pole, but you thought it was too dangerous. Now that the person is saved and the abandoned net is dragged up, you see a valuable mandarin fish inside, and suddenly you remember the collective. Zhang Taizhu's face flushed with embarrassment. Rescuing people is one thing, the fish is another. Don't mix the two. Chen Dahai put the mandarin fish into his fish basket and pressed down the bamboo lid. I found the abandoned net underwater. I personally took the mandarin fish out of the net. If you want the fish, you can go catch it yourself. Don't just stand on the bank and talk, trying to take my things. Zhang Taizhu, annoyed by the stares from those around, grabbed the edge of the fish basket. Who can prove this net was just pulled out from the river bottom? Everyone knows what kind of person you, Chen Dahai, used to be. Maybe you secretly placed this net in the river and took the chance to drag it up while rescuing someone. That was a serious accusation. Secretly setting a net in collective waters was not the same as accidentally catching a fish. If Zhang Taizhu spread the word, whenever Chen Dahai went fishing in the river afterward, people would use this against him. Chen Dahai pressed down on the fish basket, his fingers tightening gradually. Zhang Taizhu, you need evidence for what you say. If you claim I set the net, show the proof. Zhang Taizhu stiffened his neck. You used to steal grain from home, drink and gamble with others. What haven't you done? With your character, what more evidence is needed? The murmurs among the crowd grew louder. Chen Dahai's past reputation was indeed too poor. Even though he had saved someone today, some still viewed him through the lens of the past. Sun Weigua, who had been arranging for Zhao Wenshan to be sent to the hospital, heard the commotion and walked over. You say this net was set by Chen Dahai? Seeing Sun Weigua speak, Zhang Taizhu's tone softened. Station Master Sun, I'm just saying it's possible. Chen Dahai's reputation in the village wasn't good, and North River Bay belongs to the collective. We can't just let him take the fish away. Sun Weigua ignored his excuse, crouched down, and examined the abandoned net that had been dragged up. Most of the net lines were rotten, the surface covered with waterweed and mud. Several parts of the net were hung with blackened snail shells, and the iron sinkers were rusted almost beyond recognition. Having worked at the aquatic product station for many years, Sun Weigua could tell at a glance that this net had been at the river bottom for at least 2 or 3 years. This net wasn't set recently. He stood up and wiped the mud from his hands onto the snow. The net lines are mostly rotted, and the waterweed has long grown into the knots. If Chen Dahai had set it recently, it couldn't have become like this. Zhang Taizhu opened his mouth. Even if he didn't set it, the fish is still from North River Bay. North River Bay is collective waters. Sun Weigua looked at him. The aquatic product station came here today to inspect the winter fish situation and water conditions, not to organize a collective catch by the production team. This mandarin fish was not sampled by the station, nor was it a collective catch arranged by the production team. After the man fell into the river, Chen Dahai went into the water to rescue him, cut the abandoned net, and brought the fish up with him. Sun Weiguo's tone was steady, leaving no room for argument. According to your logic, anything from North River Bay must be handed over to the production team. Then should the production team also take over the abandoned net that Chen Dahai pulled from the river? That net entangled the station's technician and nearly caused a death. Should the production team also bear the responsibility? Zhang Tieju's face changed. He only wanted to grab the fish. He dared not take on the subsequent responsibility. Station Master Sun, that's not what I meant. Then what do you mean? Sun Weiguo pointed at the fish basket. Chen Dahai risked his life to rescue someone, and this mandarin fish was taken by him personally from the abandoned net. I'm here watching today. This fish belongs to him. If anyone thinks this is unfair, they can come to the County Aquatic Products Station to find me and explain the whole story from beginning to end. The few who had been echoing Zhang Taizhu fell silent. Sun Weiguo was not an ordinary technician. He was the station master of the County Aquatic Products Station and the person in charge of this survey. Since he had publicly stated that the mandarin fish belonged to Chen Dahai, if Zhang Taizhu continued to cause trouble, it would not be speaking for the collective, but deliberately trying to take things. Zhang Taizhu still held the edge of the fish basket, unwilling to let go. Chen Dahai looked down at his hand. Didn't you hear what Station Master Sun said? Zhang Taizhu gritted his teeth and released the fish basket. I was just afraid someone would take advantage of the collective's property. Chen Dahai brushed the ice chips off the fish basket. If you really care so much about the collective, next time someone falls into the water, be the first to jump in. Someone nearby couldn't help but laugh. Zhang Tieju's face turned red. He glared fiercely at Chen Dahai, then turned and pushed through the crowd. Chen Dahai didn't press the humiliation further. Zhang Taizhu was just a petty man in the village who liked to take advantage, not worth his time. What truly mattered was that Sun Weiguo had made things clear on his behalf in front of the whole village today. From now on, if anyone in the village tried to use his past reputation to label him as a fish thief or someone who took advantage of collective property, they would have to think twice about what happened today. This carried more weight than a private promise to come find me later. Sun Weiguo walked over to Chen Dahai. Don't take what happened earlier to heart. There are all kinds of people in the village. Chen Dahai shook his head. I really was no good before. It's normal that they don't trust me. Sun Weiguo's eyes showed a hint of surprise. He had expected Chen Dahai to use his backing to argue endlessly with the villagers. But Chen Dahai didn't throw his weight around or shift all the blame onto others. Acknowledging his past mistakes and knowing when to fight and when to stop, this composure didn't match the village's image of a good-for-nothing. People change. Sun Weiguo patted him on the shoulder. You risked your life to save Zhao Wenshan today, which is more than many who just stand on the shore and talk. Not far away, Zhao Wenshan was being carried onto a makeshift wooden board by the villagers. His breathing had returned, but his face was still pale. He needed to be sent to the town hospital as soon as possible. Sun Weiguo glanced over and then said, I'll take Wenshan to the hospital first. When things are settled, come by the county fishery station sometime. We need to reassess the winter fishing situation in this area. The station has also been researching fry cultivation and pond utilization. You're familiar with the waterways of North River Bay and have fishing skills. We can have a good talk then. Chen Dahai's heart stirred at the mention of fry cultivation and pond utilization. This was exactly the opportunity he wanted. Relying solely on fishing in the river could only solve his immediate needs. To grow the business, he needed stable waters, formal channels, and the support of the fishery station. But Zhao Wenshan had just been rescued. Now wasn't the time to ask for details. Okay. Station Chief Sun, take Technician Zhao to the hospital first. I'll come to the county to find you in a few days. Sun Weiguo nodded. Just mention my name at the fishery station. With that, he led a few staff members to escort Zhao Wenshan away. The villagers parted to make way. Many looked at Chen Dahai with different eyes than before. Previously, when people mentioned Chen Dahai, they only thought of drinking, idling, and hovering around Lin Xiaomei. Today, he had first caught a big fish from the frozen river bend, then dared to dive into icy water to save someone, and the county fishery station chief had personally backed him. This good-for-nothing seemed truly different now. Old Uncle Zhou picked up Chen Dahai's wet clothes. Dahai, go home and warm up by the fire. You've been in the water so long, don't catch a cold. Chen Dahai took the clothes. Uncle Zhou, thanks for pulling the rope on the shore today. Without your help, I couldn't have rescued Technician Zhao alone. Old Uncle Zhou felt pleased. You found him, we just lent a hand. If you had this skill earlier, Wanxiu and Xiaoman wouldn't have had to suffer so much with you. Chen Dahai didn't argue. I was a mess before. I won't be anymore. Su Wanxiu stood outside the crowd and heard this. She looked at Chun Dahai, soaked through and pale from cold, with a complex expression. When Sun Weigua had backed Chun Dahai earlier, she felt something she had never felt before. The man who was once despised wherever he went had now made a name for himself with the county official. He no longer proved himself by drinking and boasting. Instead, he used real skill to pull a person out of the icy river. Chen Xiaoman broke free from Su Wanqiu's hand and ran to Chen Dahai. "Dad, are you cold?" "A little." Chen Dahai touched his daughter's head. "I'll be fine after a bowl of hot water at home." Chen Xiaoman saw the mandarin fish in the creel, and her face lit up with surprise. "Such a big fish. Did you catch it too, Dad?" "Sort of." Chen Dahai lifted the creel. "Let's talk at home." The family of three walked along the snow-covered path back to the village. The crowd by the river gradually dispersed. Zhang Taizhu stood in the distance, staring at Chen Dahai's back with resentment. He couldn't understand. How had a good-for-nothing, whom everyone could trample on, suddenly connected with the county fishery station chief? Back in the yard, Su Wanqiu immediately boiled a pot of hot water. Chen Dahai changed out of his wet clothes, wiped himself with hot water, and sat by the stove wrapped in a quilt to warm up. The chill slowly faded. When Su Wanqiu took Chen Xiaoman to the inner room for clean clothes, Chen Dahai turned his attention to the system. The prompt he had suppressed earlier reappeared before his eyes. First capture of a new species of catch. Random multiplier draw completed. This trigger, 18 times quantity return. Obtained 18 wild mandarin fish of the same specification. Chen Dahai saw the system waters before him. 18 wild mandarin fish, each weighing 4 to 5 jin, were swimming in the water. Every fish was intact and full of vitality, identical to the one he had put in the creel. Chen Dahai's breathing quickened. A single top-quality Christian carp had made Zhou Guoqiang from the state-run restaurant leave his contact information. A wild mandarin fish weighing 4 to 5 jin was even rarer in winter. Now there were 18 in the system space. He couldn't take them all out at once. Too many would not only lower their value, but also arouse suspicion. For truly scarce items, only by controlling the supply could he gain more meaningful favors. "I'll send one to the state-run restaurant tomorrow." Zhou Guoqiang mentioned last time that an important guest there specifically wanted fresh river fish. Ordinary Christian carp can only satisfy the kitchen. A wild mandarin fish this big is enough to make the diner ask who sent it. Chen Dahai looked at the swimming mandarin fish and made his plan. Sun Weigua had blocked the first hand from the village. Next, he would use these mandarin fish to knock on a higher door in the county town. When Chen Dahai returned home, the chill on him hadn't dissipated. Su Wanqiu had already boiled a pot of hot water and taken out the thickest old cotton-padded clothes from the bottom of the chest, neatly placed by the Kong. After Chen Dahai washed and changed into dry clothes, he came out of the inner room to find Su Wanqiu squatting by the wooden basin, wringing out his wet clothes. The clothes had absorbed icy water and were heavy. Her hands were red from cold, but she didn't stop. Chen Dahai walked over and reached out. "Let me do it." Su Wanqiu avoided his hand. "No need." Her voice was flat, and she kept her head down, not even looking at him. Chen Dahai was stunned for a moment. At North River Bay, Su Wanqiu had been so worried her face turned pale. After he emerged from the old ice hole, the anxiety in her eyes was unmistakable. But now that they were home, she was ignoring him. Chen Dahai stood beside her for a while. Still angry, Su Wanqiu didn't answer. "I thought it through before going into the water. I had a rope tied around my waist and a knife hidden in my sleeve. If I encountered water plants or fishing nets, I could cut them in time. I've been in that underwater channel before. I know where the current goes." Su Wanqiu hung the wet clothes on the rack and turned to clean up the water on the floor. Chen Dahai followed her. "I wasn't being reckless. If something happened to the county fishery station people in our village, it would cause trouble for the village later. Besides, if I could save him, the station would owe me a favor. That could open doors for selling fish, getting fishing permits, or contracting fish ponds." He had already said some of this by the river. Su Wanqiu still ignored him. She picked up a broom and swept the water out the door. Chen Dahai looked at her tense profile, increasingly confused. "Wanqiu, I had a plan for saving him. If you think I did something wrong, just say it." Su Wanqiu's hand gripping the broom tightened. Chen Dahai continued. "Are you afraid I'm back to my old ways? Showing off without regard for anything? I told you, this time is different. I knew what I was doing." "Enough." Su Wanqiu spun around. Her eyes were red, and her chest heaved rapidly, as if the emotions she had held back all the way finally burst out. Chen Dahai was stunned. Su Wanqiu stared at him, her voice trembling. "You knew what you were doing? When the rope went slack, did you know everyone on the shore thought you were dead? There was no movement in the water, and no matter how Uncle Lao Zhou pulled the rope, there was no response. I was holding Xiaoman, standing there looking at that ice hole, and I almost thought you would never come back. Chindahai opened his mouth. Su Wanchio's tears finally fell. You used to be a scoundrel, drinking, giving away things from home, and I wished you would never come back. But when you really fell into the icy river, all I could think was, what would happen to me and Xiaoman if you died? She had just had a full meal, just waited until you were willing to go out and earn money. If you were gone, would you abandon us mother and daughter again? When the last words came out, she seemed to have used up all her strength. The room fell silent. The firewood in the stove made a faint crackling sound. Chen Xiaoman stood at the inner room door, holding her patched little cotton jacket, not daring to make a sound. Chindahai looked at Su Wanchio's reddened eyes, and his heart felt as if something was squeezing it. He had always thought that Su Wanchio only felt disappointment towards him. Her nervousness by the river was just worry about losing a laborer at home. Only now did he truly understand. This woman, whose heart he had broken, still feared he wouldn't come back. Chindahai took a step forward. Su Wanchio immediately turned her face away. Stay away from me. Chindahai didn't stop. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. Su Wanchio's body stiffened. Then she pushed him hard. Let go. Chindahai, let go of me. She wasn't very strong, and her hands and feet were weak from fright. She pushed several times, but Chindahai remained still. Chindahai tightened his arms, holding her firmly. I'm sorry. This time I didn't consider your feelings. Su Wanchio struggled again. Chindahai said in a low voice, I will come back from now on. Whether I go fishing in the river or go out on business, I will come back. This life of mine is not just mine. I have you and Xiaoman at home. I can't bear to die. Su Wanchio's movements slowed down. She still wouldn't relent verbally. Who cares about your promise? How many times have you said you'd change, and which time did you keep your word? Chindahai said, From now on, I mean what I say. Su Wanchio's hands pressed against his chest. She could feel the lingering chill on Chindahai's body and hear his strong heartbeat. The worry that had been hanging over her all the way finally settled. She didn't respond, nor did she push again. Chindahai sensed that the person in his arms was no longer struggling, and a warmth he couldn't describe rose in his heart. They had been married for so many years, but this was the first time he held his wife soberly. Not drunken antics. Not to vent anger. Just to tell her that he had really come back. Chen Xiaoman stood by the door watching for a while, then suddenly asked softly, Mom, are you crying? Su Wanchio snapped back to reality and forcefully broke free from Chindahai. This time, Chindahai let go. Su Wanchio wiped away her tears, turned around, and picked up the bowl on the stove. Who's crying? It's the smoke from the fire. Chen Xiaoman looked at the stove, then at her red eyes, clearly not believing it. Su Wanchio handed a bowl of hot water to Chindahai. There were 2 slices of old ginger in the water. This was the last bit of ginger left at home, which she had been reluctant to use. Drink it. Don't catch a cold. Chindahai took the bowl. Still saying you're not worried about me? Su Wanchio glared at him. If you get sick, who will go out to earn money? I just don't want to take care of another patient. Chindahai didn't call her out. He lowered his head and took a sip of the ginger soup. The spicy warmth went down his throat, driving away the last trace of cold from his body. Su Wanchio picked up the broom and continued cleaning the room. But this time, her movements weren't as heavy as before. Chindahai watched her back, knowing clearly that Su Wanchio wouldn't forgive him just because of a hug. But at least, the wall that had been tightly sealed between them finally had a crack. On the other side, Sun Weihua had already followed the tractor to the town hospital. When Zhao Wenshan was pushed into the consultation room, his face was still pale. After the examination, the doctor confirmed that he had inhaled a lot of river water and his body was frostbitten from the ice water, so he had to be hospitalized for observation. Fortunately, he was rescued in time. A few minutes later, the outcome would have been uncertain. Sun Weihua stood at the door of the ward, listening to the doctor, and broke out in a cold sweat. He was leading this survey. If Zhao Wenshan had really died, he would not only bear responsibility, but also implicate the entire aquatic products station. More importantly, Zhao Wenshan was not yet 30, with a wife and children at home. A living life had nearly been lost in Beha Bay. Sun Weihua recounted the entire incident from beginning to end. After learning about it, the police station and commune staff quickly confirmed the scene. Chindahai didn't just happen to pull the person ashore. He first judged the direction of the undercurrent, then risked diving under the ice to cut the waste net that had entangled Zhao Wenshan, and finally brought the person out of the water. This was a genuine life-saving feat. Sun Weihua immediately proposed to apply for commendation and consolation rewards for Chindahai. This person might have had a bad reputation in the village before, but what happened today cannot be erased because of his past. Before going into the water, he made clear arrangements. He tied a rope around his own waist, prepared another rope to tie the person, and carried a knife. This was not impulsive bravado. It was experienced and judicious. This kind of behavior should be known to the whole village. The commune cadre nodded in agreement. The police station officer also said they could publicly commend him for acting bravely and rescuing someone from the icy river, and also give him appropriate consolation. The matter was quickly settled. In the evening, the crisp sound of bicycle bells came from outside Chinjia village. 2 uniformed police officers, a commune cadre, and Sun Weigwa entered the village. Several bicycles had things tied to the back seats. On one of the handlebars hung a rolled-up red silk banner. The children playing at the village entrance saw it first. The police are here. They're going to Chundahai's house. The news spread like wildfire. Villagers who were eating dinner put down their bowls, put on their cotton jackets, and went outside. Zhang Taizhu heard the commotion and felt a pang of worry. Sun Weigwa had already publicly stated that the mandarin fish belonged to Chundahai. Now the police had entered the village. He feared Chundahai might report the earlier dispute over the fish. But then he thought again. Zhang Taizhu felt something was off. Chundahai had done so many terrible things in the past. The police suddenly showing up might be to investigate him for stealing fish, illegal fishing, or the waste net at the bottom of the river. Thinking of this, Zhang Taizhu grew bolder. He mixed in with the crowd and deliberately raised his voice. I said that mandarin fish couldn't be taken casually. See, the police have come knocking. Maybe they're here to investigate him for embezzling collective catches. Several villagers who didn't know the situation heard this and started discussing. Really arresting him? Chundahai just saved someone. It can't be, right? Saving someone is one thing. Making mistakes is another. Seeing that some believed him, Zhang Tieju's lips curled into a slight smile. But then he saw Sun Weigwa also with the police. The group arrived at the Chun family's doorstep.